Welcome to Mental Makeover Radio, your go-to destination for meaningful conversations about mental health. I'm your host and your trusted therapist bestie, Cecilia Mannella. Join us as we explore the complexities and messiness of human experience by addressing your questions and concerns. I'm here to provide a straightforward and practical therapy advice. So grab your favorite beverage, whether it's tea, coffee, or whatever tickles your taste buds, and get ready to embark on a mental makeover. If I asked you to rate the level of stress in your life, what would your number be out of 10? 10 being the highest level of stress you've ever experienced and 1 being the lowest. Where would you put yourself? Today's episode, we're diving into the whole topic of stress, and we're going to take a very specific approach to stress. And I want you to walk away with some tangible ways to create some pretty radical change in your life. That is going to take a little bit of hard work because it's about breaking some habits, but it's actually not impossible. So if you're tuning in, I am Cecilia Mannella. This is Mental Makeover Radio. Thank you for coming to listen today and spend some time with me. I am super passionate about this topic. Now, a personal disclosure is stress has become really an important topic for me to dive into because I recently had my cortisol levels checked. So if you don't know what cortisol is this amazing hormone in your body, and we typically refer to it as a stress hormone. So it is the highest first thing in the morning. It's actually what wakes you up in the morning, and it should be the lowest at night so that your melatonin actually can increase, and melatonin is what helps you sleep. So cortisol and melatonin work in opposites. Now, I've had my cortisol tested recently because I was having some physical symptoms. And I had a suspicion that perhaps my cortisol levels were too high. And lo and behold, they were through the roof. And so the focus has been a lot about stress management, stressors in your life, and doing a lot more research on stress and what's happening in the world today, which is very relevant to the work that I do as a therapist. But also I wanted to share information with you so that you can change your life and you can take some actionable steps to creating a difference. Now, we need stress. Okay. So even if we were to think about defining stress, we all use the term, but do we really know the definition? Okay. So the definition of stress is really a state of mental or emotional strain or tension that is a result from an external source of pressure, which can be, demanding circumstances or something that's really demanding in your life. Now, we all experience it. We all have circumstances in which we are responding in a stressful manner, and hopefully the situation peaks and then comes back down, and we're kind of back to homeostasis, back to this calm place. The problem is that in today's day and age, we rarely get back to that calm place anymore. We are in constant state of stress, from one stressor to the next stressor to the next stressor. Now, there's an acronym when it comes to stress where we categorize stressors into different parts. So the acronym is TONN, T-O-N-N, which stands for trauma, obsessions, nuances, and noise. Okay, so trauma is the experience of a traumatic event, which we all know about. Usually it involves abuse or a car accident or a sudden death. That's what we mean by trauma. Obsessions are more about our obsessive thinking. When we get too worried about not being good enough or being thin enough or, being really anxious about something or not performing. That's kind of what we think of when we think about obsessions. Noise is the chitter chatter that is surrounding us all the time. So it's a constant influx of information. It's noise in our head because we don't ever really stand still anymore. We don't do really silence anymore. We're constantly inundated with noise, right? And then the last piece, which is I really, really want to focus on, is this idea of nuisance. So there's stress that is just a nuisance. And we have a lot of this in our life. And that's what I want to talk about today. So what is a nuisance? It's just kind of something that's really irritating. And the thing is that humans are super adaptable. It is really our superpower. And we would not be where we are right now in history unless we were super adaptable. We adapt to our circumstances. We adapt to adversities. We adapt to war. We adapt to famine. We are built to survive. And that is so fucking amazing that we are built to survive. As humans, we have gone through a lot when we think about human history. And our ability to adapt is actually what makes us very unique and special. But the problem is that in our adaptation to a stressful situation or external event, we kind of create a new normal. And again, that's really great for survival in the sense that, if there's you think about our great grandparents, if they were part of World War II, there's this idea of like the only reason that you could have survived the horrors of war is our adaptability. And then in that adaptability, we found a new normal in that awful, stressful situation. When the situation was over, then we had to adapt to being out of that situation. So we do have this superpower of adaptability, which is wonderful. And yet it's also our Achilles heel. It's also one of our weaknesses. Because we adapt so quickly, we forget that what we're adapting to isn't good for us. And this is where the nuisance stress comes in. This is where we adapt to all the little tiny nuisances in our life and we just rename them normal. And in that, we forget that they're actually quite stressful. So you mentally are maybe not registering them as stressors, but your body is actually registering them as stressors. So this is a bit of a miscommunication between the body and the mind. The brain is very aware. So the brain is the actual brain. Our brain is very aware of these stressors. And the brain acts like a supercomputer in the sense that it dictates how we adapt. The mind is really about how we think about what's happening to us. Okay, so our mind is our consciousness. It's our ability to create meaning of our experiences. It's very, very active. And it's where we kind of create all the stories and all the narratives. Now, I want you to think about your life for a moment. And I want you to try to be an observer of your day, of any day, today. Or think about tomorrow and what's predictable about tomorrow. And I want you to think about that day. And I want to think you to look at auditing that day just a little bit and thinking about all the little tiny things that are nuisances in your life that you just adapted to. Now, if I were to think about your day and take a best guess, you have an alarm that wakes you up. There is a habit that you do first thing in the morning, whether that's to grab your phone and scroll or grab your phone and read the news or put on some music. You probably get up, hopefully, and brush your teeth and do all the things that you need to do around self-care and getting ready for work. Maybe you eat, maybe you get the kids ready. Maybe you're trying to get everyone up and ready to go. You're packing lunches, maybe arranging rides, dealing with sick children, adapting to that morning as quickly as possible. Then you get on with your day. Maybe you're commuting to work. Maybe you're not commuting. Maybe you work from home. You turn on the computer. You're maybe checking your emails before you get to work. Check your emails when you get to work. Maybe there's some chitter chatter at people at work. Maybe there's meetings first thing in the morning. And then your day just goes on and on and on. And then you have the end of workday habits and routines, returning home, dealing with all the things that happen when you get home, all the way into the point till you go to sleep. Now, when I think about my day, and I think of all the things that are adapted, things I've adapted to that are nuisances. And these are some of the things I've changed in my life recently, and also what I commit to continuing to change, is I got myself a light alarm. And what that means is I don't wake up to a blaring sound. I wake up to a slow glow that this alarm lights up, and it sings a lot of bird songs. And it's been absolutely life-changing in many ways. I don't wake up jarred anymore. I don't wake up with that kind of anxiety of like the alarm goes off and it's blaring in my ear and I'm falling out of bed and it's this whole cluster of a situation. I wake up in probably the most calm state ever by changing the way I do alarms. But I want you to think about all the nuisances in which you've adapted. How about the notification sound on your phone? Now, there's interesting research around that sound, right? So there's research into our physiological response to that notification sound. And it's so embedded in our culture now, that we respond to it very, very quickly. Now, you may not be noticing it in your mind when your phone goes off. A little ding, the sound of Instagram, the sound of Pinterest, the sound of an email, whatever it is. You may not notice it, but your body notices it in the fact that your blood pressure rises, your heart rate increases, you're physiological having a response to that notification. And that's just one sound in your entire day. It's one sound. It's a nuisance that creates stress in your life, that creates a distraction. There was this interesting study that was done a while ago, and they did this in the mall back in the day when we all went to the mall, right? Maybe we don't go to the mall anymore. Maybe we're all shopping online, which is also a nuisance. But there's this research that they pulled just random people in the mall, and they had them put their phones facing down on a table. They had to stand right in front of the table, just looking at the back end of their phone. And what they had to do is they just had to stand there for as long as possible without answering their phone or touching their phone. And if they could stand there, and whoever stood there the longest without touching their phone won, they would give them $5,000. And there's 10 people, and they repeated this experiment over and over and over again. And what the participants didn't know is that the researchers were, when they gathered their information and they gathered their name, they took their phone number. And the researchers were then sending text messages to the phone. So the phone's notifications are going off all the time. And it would be kind of random and then really quickly, and then it would stop for a bit. So they kind of, did a little bit of tempo around it. And if you had to guess the amount of people that actually lasted long enough to actually get the money, I think you'd be shocked, because 95% of people didn't make it past 5 minutes. 5 minutes of not answering their phone. They were so anxiously, so riddled with anxiety of hearing their phone and their notifications going off over and over and over again. They could not help themselves besides picking up their phone. That shows you how adapted we've become to notifications. And that's just one source of nuisance stress in your life. Your life is filled with them, whether it's from your habit of getting a coffee or standing in line or your commute or the way that you do things, the way you engage with your technology, how you check your emails, how often you check your emails and what that process is, and the meetings that you have. Everything that happens in your day has been adaptable. You've adapted to it. The thing is that your body's registering it as stress. It is absolutely no surprise that we have the greatest amount of technology in human history, and yet we're the most miserable, stressed, and unwell we've ever been. I want you to really think about that, because technology gives us this illusion that we can just find an app to reduce the stress in our life. But we are not built for that. We have so much more time as human beings on this planet managing life in a very different way. Not that long ago, we didn't have even electricity. In the grand scheme of life, in the grand scheme of human history, even the advent of electricity is fairly brand new. Now, I know a lot of young people do think this is ridiculous. And if you're, I'm 45. So I remember not having cell phones. I remember leaving the house and no one knowing where I was going. I remember coming home waiting to see if anyone called me and left me a message on an answering machine, whether I was disappointed or excited about that. I remember having experiences and not taking pictures. I remember being in those experiences and telling stories. Now, we are built in many ways and to sit around and tell stories. We are storytellers. We've lost the art of telling stories. We now take photos and we take selfies and we document our life, yet we're not living the life we're documenting. We're too busy looking at it through a screen instead of being in it. And we forget that we are human beings. We're not human doings. We're supposed to be living this life. We're so busy planning and thinking about the future and what we're going to do. We're planning this life and we're not even living it. We're not living in the moment. We're not living in it. And I know it's super cliche to enjoy the moment or live in the present or live in the now, but there's a lot of truth to that, in that Our ancestors didn't work half as hard as we did. They worked in the sense to feed themselves and to make sure there was food on the table. And they worked hard enough to, potentially plant or hunt and gather and all the things that they did. And then the job was done. Like their main concern was shelter and food and water. And that's about it. Stressful? Yeah, sure, because there were maybe like battling bears and saber-toothed tigers. But also that was like a stressful event that happened that had a peak in the stress. And then when the situation was gone, the stress came down and then we're back into a form of being relaxed. We are living in such heightened levels of stress that we actually don't come back down to homeostasis. We do not come down back from that peak. And most people are living like peak to peak to peak when it comes to stress. We are wanting to control everything as much as possible to give us a sense of autonomy and control and that we can find peace. If I can just get to that thing, if I just finish my to-do list, if I just finish this task, I'm going to get to this place and enjoy my life. But your life is happening right now. Your life is happening in this moment. As you're listening to that, your life is actually happening. Your life isn't a future event. Your life is a present event in this moment. And we have lost connection to that. We've lost connection to sitting around the fire and telling stories. We've lost connection to that. When is the last time that you sat around with a group of people, friends, family, people, and told stories of your adventure, of your life, of things you've done? Not to sit around and complain about what's wrong or what's hard. I mean, we can talk about hardship and we can tell stories of grief and loss and devastation and heartbreak and share that in the space of other people. But how often do we do that? We're so terrified to be vulnerable. We're so terrified to have human experiences and not appear perfect or not appear to have it all put together, that we're presenting a false identity of who we are, a false identity that we think other people want to see. And we do not want to show the truth of who we are. So we're so busy engaged in these just nuisance stressors that we're not actually living our lives. Now, this is a call of action because I challenge you to think about your life and to get rid of all the nuisance stressors. Trust me, it is a lot easier to get rid of those little pesky things than focus on changing your thinking around the noise that you're experiencing in your head, or changing how sometimes you may have obsessive thinking about problem solving and worries and anxieties. Like that stuff is really hard to change. It takes a lot of time and dedication and work. And healing trauma takes a lot of dedication. But the nuisances in your life are easy to change. It requires intention and to do something different. So you can turn the notifications off on your phone. Just turn it on silent. I dare you to turn it on silent. Use the night mode on your phone. Make sure it just turns off at a certain time, and not midnight, but more like 9 p.m. Maybe even 8 p.m. And just notice what it's like to live with a little bit of silence, a little bit of quiet. Be with yourself. I know it's scary, and I know we avoid it more than anything. Again, another research that was done, the option to people was to wait for 15 minutes in silence with no phone or receive an electrical shock. Okay, so your options are to wait for 15 minutes with no distractions, no phone, no nothing. So in silence with yourself, or get an electric shock. 90% of people pick the electric shock. We're so terrified of spending 15 minutes by ourselves. All you have to do is go to the grocery store, any store, and look at the lineup. Nobody's talking to each other. Nobody's giving eye contact. Everybody's on their phone. We are so terrified. We've adapted to being scared to having some time alone, to having time with ourselves, to just observe the world around us. We're so easily influenced and distracted by all the nuisances in your life. And your phone is a great source of it. Now, I'm not anti-technology. I love technology, but we need to use it as a tool and not the other way around. And this is a piece that we forget. We've kind of lost ways a little bit. So I want you to audit your life, and I want you to pay attention to every single day, all the little tiny things that you've adapted for, that you've adapted to, that you just tell yourself, oh, this is just normal. And unnormal it. Take it apart and say, well, when did this become normal? When did I adapt to this? When did I actually adapt to this? How long has it been? Has it been a year, 2 years, 5 years, 10 years? Has it been 20 years? How long has it been since you've adapted to something that is no longer serving you, but you've told yourself this is normal? These are the places where you can make a lot of change. Change your alarm. Change what you do when you wake up in the morning. Take a moment, stretch in bed, look outside, take some deep breaths before you engage in anything. Think about your day. Think about the nuisances in which you've adapted to. And these can also be relationships in your life. There's some relationships we're holding on to that are just not good for us. And we hold them on to our obligation. This doesn't mean letting go of relationships. It means changing the dynamic in which you engage in that relationship. Spend time with people who show up for you, who love you, who celebrate you, who want to be part of your life, your everyday life, not the future version of you that you're trying to get to, not to the goals that you're trying to get to, none of that. Be in this moment and present and ask yourself, does this relationship serve me in the way that it's constructed? This is not about always getting rid of people. We often talk about boundaries and getting rid of people, but the dynamic of the relationship can change. It can be something that you've adapted to that no longer serves you, but you can change the dynamic of that relationship. You can make these changes. It all comes with being attuned and paying attention. This is the greatest and quickest way for you to make change and stress in your own life. Trust me. Make the adjustments. And as I call you out and call you into this, I'm calling myself into this as well, because clearly, with my cortisol results being through the roof means I've also adapted to this. So I am not any different than you. And I know better in the sense of this is my education. This is my background. This is what I research. This is what I read. This is what I immerse myself in. This is what I talk about all day long. And I do not sit outside of it. I am also influenced by it. Taking a stand against the allure of all the nuisances is an act of rebellion, because it means I'm actually standing against what everyone else is doing. I'm standing against what I've been told I should do. So it doesn't benefit you to be super stressed. It doesn't benefit me to be super stressed. The only thing that's going to get me is it's going to get me into an early grave. And the same thing for you. The health outcomes that are stress-related illnesses is astronomical. So how is it that we have so much technology to help us live a better life? We have access to so many resources to live a better life. And yet we're the most medicated, unhappy, unwell population we've ever seen in human history. Like something's not working. Something is a bit broken. And I suspect it's the level of stress that we're under, that we don't like to have our own company. We don't like to be sitting with our own thoughts. We have been groomed and conditioned to not have downtime or wait in line or make conversation with strangers. We no longer tell stories. We just throw a photo on whatever social media platform of your choice and expect everyone to look at our life through the photos we choose to share. We're no longer in experiences. We're taking video and photos of those experiences. And then we're not telling those stories anymore. We're not being descriptive with our words anymore. And in that, we're not connecting to other people because we connect to the stories we tell. There's nothing better than hearing a really great story that just makes you laugh your ass off. That's being present in that moment, not on your phone, not distracted, being fully present in a person telling a story, or you telling your own story, telling something funny, telling an adventure you've been on, telling someone what you've learned and having that person's full attention. If you could wrap that up into a pill, which they've tried, but they can't. They've tried, but they can't. Because there's nothing like that. That is a source of de-stressing. Getting rid of all the nuisances, focusing on what actually matters. trust me, this is really hard because you're going to get pulled right back into it, because we all are. We're all going to get pulled right back. So it is the push and pull of it, is being aware of it, making the changes, trying to stay strong, and noticing when you're getting pulled back into it. So do an audit. Write out all the nuisance stressors you have. Change them. It doesn't have to be a massive change. It can be a little change. Just pivot just a little bit. Make some shifts. Question what's normal. Ask yourself, when did this become normal for me? And is it serving me anymore? Make those changes and notice how you might be feeling different. Grab a journal every single day. Write how you're feeling. Are you more focused? Are you sleeping better? Do you find that you're more present? Are you feeling a bit more anxious? Because trust me, any kind of change brings on some anxiety. So anticipate that there's going to be a reaction to the change that you're making, because humans always have reactions to the change. So this is not about avoiding the change because it brings up a little bit of uneasiness or a little bit of worry or a little bit of uncertainty. Lean into that. Lean into the uncertainty. Lean into the worry. Lean into the not knowing, and tell yourself it's going to be okay. Put your phone away. Put your phone down. Change a habit. Just see it as a nuisance. It's just a nuisance. Get rid of it. And I want you to lean into a little bit of discomfort, because on the other side of it, there's a little bit of freedom. There's a little bit more joy. There's laughter. There's connection. There's enjoyment. There's rest and restoration and a little bit of peace, because you deserve it. And I want to know how this goes for you. I want you to let me know. I want you to hop on and make a response to this podcast. I want you to shoot me off an email. I want you, if you're hanging out on social, I want you to let me know what has changed for you in listening to this episode, and what are you doing to change the nuisances, the stressful nuisance in your life. What are they? And bringing that down, like just turning the dial just a little bit so that you can have a little bit more peace and rest, but a little bit more joy. I want you to be joyful. I want you to find some happiness. I want you to find contentment. I want you to look at your life and think, God, this is great. Yes, things are hard, and that's okay. But at the core, things are good, and I am good, and I am safe, and I'm going to be well. I really hope that you found this episode helpful. If this spoke to you in any kind of way, I would love it if you could rate and review the podcast. If you could follow it, if you could share it with anyone who needs this, it really just helps the podcast grow and reach more people. I really appreciate you being part of the Mental Makeover community, and I look forward to having ongoing conversations with you. Until next time, be bold, be brave, be well.